So as Neil said, my name is Guy Bradshaw. I represent the only commercial organisation talking today, so that feels like a privilege, so thanks Neil for this opportunity. Who are Entity and why are we here? We're an information management specialist organisation, so we manage data, we help organisations, large, small, public, private, everything, help them manage their data. We've been around 30 years, so we have a lot of experience. We and have a number of services ranging from advisory, so just providing advice on how organisations should set themselves up to leverage their data properly. We implement, so a variety of different technologies across a lot of the different data domains that are out there, and we support ongoing. Neil asked me, he said, don't make this too salesy, so there isn't a sales pitch, there's nothing really to sell other than the fact that you know, we have a track record in this space. The other reason we're here, and I guess the main reason, is that we were the partners that Neil, WODA and Worcester County Council chose to help them initiate a lot of the thinking around how best to leverage data across their estate. So there'll be a slide on it later, but it just talks about the way that we approached understanding where the different Worcestershire agencies are in their maturity and what steps they should take, and real practical steps to improve that maturity, and the data strategy, of which you've seen some of the recommendations already of how to start going about implementing that. So Neil asked me to talk about the method that we use to try and help organisations, and then a case study. So it's just a little bit on looking at one of the public sector agencies that's out there that has had real success with a combination of strategy and technology implementation. So not too many slides, hopefully. What's the entity view on data? Well, regardless of what type of organisation you are, for us it's all about the balance, and the balance is easy to say and it's a nice slide to present, but for a long time we've seen organisations wrestle between the obligations that they have around data and the different agencies that we've spoken to. I think there's a timer on this slide telling me to hurry up. So the obligations that organisations have, and the GDPR is on its way, and so those obligations are increasing all the time. But wherever we see an obligation around data, the response to that, if that response is around managing it in a way that makes it more under control, that means you can trace where data is coming from, you can see who's using it, and you can audit how it's been transformed throughout an organisation and then where it's been sent after it's left the organisation, then that they're in a response to an obligation. But if you look at the other side of that, that's the opportunity that the agencies have to really start making use of that data. And so then that balance that, okay, makes a nice slide, but it is not easy. It is not an easy job to reconcile all the different facets of the obligations of the GDPR, the existing regulations. There's some regulated organisations around the different agencies as well. And so it really can be a battle, and part of the culture change that Neil spoke around is where we'll try and drive some of this change into turning that obligation into the opportunity for you as agencies to get the most out of your data. And why? Not because you're trying to sell more shirts or make more profit on the car sold, but because you're helping citizens and residents and real people and the economic benefits and general standard of life across Worcestershire. So the entity view, what prevents good data management? We've heard about the spreadsheets, we've heard about the systems. There are large organisations providing you with systems that help you manage data. There are small niche players, but there's a whole variety. Some of the information is on paper, some of it is in people's heads. As part of the exercise where we went to try and understand the existing maturity of the different agencies, we interviewed around about 50 people to find out their current views on what was going well, what problems they had. And that represents all the information that's out there, all the data that's stored on these different silos. And the data, the entity viewpoint is that there is a gap there between the data that's out there and the information that people need to be able to make real and practical decisions. Now, the entity method we call the data delta. So it's that gap that organisations need to cross. Now, so far, so marketing and possibly sales. It's a triangle, it's got lots of nice colours in. However, there is a book. The book is not marketing. The book is a practical practitioner's guide. You can download it free from the website. You can buy it for £40 on Amazon, but most people choose to download it free from the website. And as I said, it isn't advertising entity. It's a practitioner's guide for anybody from a strategic viewpoint down to a managerial, operational, the people really at the front line who are doing the data entry. It is a guidebook for how complex organizations can approach the challenge of data management. So at the bottom we say we've got 6 principles and we have 14 domains. So a little bit of an eye test, but essentially for each of the 14 domains, the book contains details of what success looks like across the different principles, and then in more detail on the different domains. Now, one of the things Neil mentioned was about taking the thin slice. Now, how do you tackle a huge and complex problem like trying to get all the agencies across Worcestershire sharing their data in a way that is not only secure, but enables to make real insights and some practical decisions? And the answer is the thin slice. So you will take one pilot, one use case, and for that individual use case, you can see what the benefit is if it's completed. And then we will take our method, and this is where it leaps off the page really and becomes real. We want to say, okay, who is the owner of that information? Who are the different owners? If the ICO comes knocking on your door, who are we going to point to and say, it was this individual who owned that particular data set? So there's real accountability starts getting introduced into the equation. And a number of the different agencies, when we were speaking to the different partners, weren't really able to give us a clear idea of who the particular owners were. We'll then look at the other disciplines around, okay, how well is that data described? When we spoke to the West Mercia and Warwickshire Police, there was an example given around reference data, and it was the use of the term plant in some of the data systems. So some of the areas of the force looked at plant and went, okay, that's obviously to do with theft or damage to heavy machinery. Yes, whereas the others were, they interpreted that as, well, it's related to cannabis growing. So a clear reference data problem, a very simple problem, but that can have dramatic impact on the way that resources are deployed or the way that technology is used. So we step through each of these different principles. So we'll look at how well data is described, how well data quality is recorded and monitored, who can access data, how is information being shared, how is it used across and beyond the organization. And then the layer at the bottom is a technology layer. What tools are being used by the organizations to try and manage that data set? So that's our method, and it's the method that we've used at WODA, and we've used it at countless other organizations, from global insurance giants down to tiny charities, all trying to get a handle on where their data is and how they can best make it secure, but also be able to get real insight from it. So what did we do? The brief for us when we engaged with Neil was, we'll interview as many different stakeholders as we can, and I recognise a number of faces from the room from that cohort of people, and we took as many documents from all the different agencies as we could to try and find out everything from data strategy down to individual data models or information asset registers. And we ran that through our model, and we looked for, okay, is the data owned? Is it well described? Is the good data quality being recorded? And we used that to generate the outputs on the right here. So the scores for where your different partner agencies were, the business cases that would be needed to try and drive some of those improvements, technology recommendations. So one of the recommendations that you've heard about has already been implemented around the use of the information sharing gateway as a means to try and manage the way that data is shared. And then the roadmap to get from the pretty modest scores that we recorded across the organizations, the roadmap to try and just address some of the key risks and to try and convert some of the key opportunities that exist there in all the rich data set that is across Worcestershire. So where have we as an organisation seen this work before? Well, I had a debate really about which of the examples to use, but we've gone with the London Borough of Brent. And they, some years ago, so probably I'm looking at 4 or 5 years ago now, came upon the concept of trying to establish a single view of citizen for all of their residents. Multiple data sources, and as agencies in the public sector, you'll recognise that there will be housing and there will be health and all the different data sets that you would expect in a London borough. So it's a large borough. It's one of the poorer boroughs. I mean, there's a spread of wealth, but generally it's one of the poorer boroughs. And they were wasting lots of money due to inaccurate resident data. Data entry errors, or the way that data was changed as it passed through the organisation, was causing a real overhead and was just distracting from the real task of serving citizens. So this was a technology response. It doesn't need to be a technology response, but in this case, the ambition to build a single view of the citizen across the borough was articulated in being a real-time view that would help operational efficiencies and leverage data sharing. So the view was not just inward looking for Brent to be able to help their own residents, but then to share that more globally to other boroughs within London and beyond London. And the sponsors at Brent will always be happy to talk about the progress and the pains they had to that regard. So what did they see? And this was in months. You know, there's no point recommending for public bodies a huge multi-million-pound investment that's going to require lots of licenses and lots of professional services people. This needed to show a return on value extremely quickly. And within months, they were able to point to a single source of truth for residents. There were any number of examples where overhead was being reduced through to not having to rekey information, from reducing duplicate effort. The change of circumstances that is just, you know, it's part of business as usual for public sector organisations, but it can cause us so many headaches, particularly when you're trying to do that cross-agency. So all these overheads were reduced, and the Golden View then started to get people interested, and other organisations started saying, okay, how can we start to leverage the insight that's there? So then it was extended to across the whole of the back office. That's not me. And the Tell Us Once service as well, that we're all familiar with, was supported by the single view of citizen. And they characterised this implementation as the months rolled on and the years rolled on, and everywhere they looked, they found more and more use cases where value and insight was gained. Neil's final slide about you don't know what you don't know, but it's almost become a strategy for us, really. Just throw some data sets together, and the insights that leap out, be it about the blue badge fraud or the amount of people who had apparently died but were still claiming some sort of benefit. And all these examples leap out and just go and further the business case that is underpinned by having the ambition and the will to share data across different organisations. So they called it the implementation that just kept giving. So really that's me finished. Hopefully I didn't overrun too much, Neil. Thanks for your time.